We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday night, August 25th, 2024, as we record this new show. Well, the Chicago White Sox did it again. After Sunday's loss to Detroit, the White Sox have suffered their 100th loss of the 2024 season. They are currently 31-100. So for the betting folks, like myself, the White Sox have already clinched the season win future total if you bet the under 63.5 wins. For those that picked up 61.5 under wins, when the White Sox traded Dylan Cease during spring training, the White Sox have to win their last 31 games in order for that over to hit. Safe to say, you're in great shape if you are very dour about this year's squad back in spring training. In this episode, we'll recap this weekend's action, which includes another short heater from Andrew Vaughn again, with Tim Elko doing some damage in AAA, and with how limited defensively both Vaughn and Gavin Sheets are, does it make much sense going into 2025 to carry both Vaughn and Sheets for the White Sox? We'll debate that topic, look ahead to the Texas Rangers series, which that team is suffering a World Series hangover, and finally, we'll take a look around Major League Baseball as Aaron Judge is destroying everything in his path, and who we like as the leader for the National League MVP. Joining me is Sox Machine's managing editor, Jim Margulis. And Jim, the White Sox are keeping it 100. This is the 6th 100-loss season in franchise history. Why in the world, in our 11 years of podcasting, we are now covering 3 of those 100-loss seasons?
There are so many ways that this season, the record, just surprises me in terms of, oh, I didn't think of it that way. God, it's bad. Like, it's being in it every day and just witnessing it and getting numbed and inured to it. It's very, sometimes it shakes you out of your complacency a little bit when you hear that the White Sox could go on a 31-game losing streak to end the season, and they'd still need to win another 36 to get to 500. Like, that's just a new way to put it. So, or sorry, 38 to win it. So yeah, just like that's the kind of stuff that pops up now and again. Like, oh yeah, they are really, 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 really far under 500. Like, they are 2 seasons worth of losses basically, when it comes to what they've suffered this year. So yeah, it is staggering, and no signs of slowing. It doesn't show signs of stopping.
The thing about Chris Getz's career as general manager, he may forever, Jim, be below 500. When you look at his regular season win-loss total, he'll forever be below 500. Because I have to look it up, because you have to consider he took over as the interim GM last year when Jerry fired Kenny and Rick. So I didn't even take into consideration those games. And here they are, 31-100. He may never get above 500 as general manager in no matter how long that he is the GM for the Chicago White Sox. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, so that's 84 to 86 wins or something like that. They're currently on pace, or 86 losses. 86 under 500, I should say. So basically, in order to cut into that, you'd have to win like probably like 3 consecutive division titles, like 4 consecutive postseason grade teams in order to eliminate that gap as fast as possible. So yeah, that's another staggering way to put it.
I think you need like 5 consecutive 90 and 72 win seasons.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe they win 100, maybe they win 90, going to go back and forth and pay off a little bit in advance to cut down interest as they go along, like a double payment here. But they would have been foreclosed upon or repossessed several times by now.
Well, a shout out to Cespesdes BBQ, those guys. The White Sox are on the brink of getting mopped. So they have coined this new term. Instead of getting swept is a 3-game series loss. Losing a 4-game series is getting mopped, according to Cespesdes BBQ, which I kind of like. It differs between getting swept and losing 4 consecutive games to an opponent. The White Sox lost 5-2 on Friday, Saturday 13-4, Sunday 9-4, and Monday night the wraparound. Ty Madden, the Detroit Tigers, will be making his Major League Baseball debut against the Chicago White Sox, and Davis Martin will be making the start for the White Sox against the Detroit Tigers. Jim, do you like that term? Do you like mopped for 4-game series losses?
Yeah, I certainly see no harm in it. I think it makes more sense now because it's basically 3 and 4-game series. Back in the day when it was 3 games or 5 games, sometimes 6 games, if you had a doubleheader, you would really need a wide array of cleaning terms in order to sum it up. I guess you can do that with 2, 3, and 4 now. I mean, maybe a 2-game series is getting dusted, and then swept, and then mopped, and then deep cleaned if there's a doubleheader. Yeah, see no harm in it. Fun and evocative, and I know what they mean. So the brief learning curve of what the hell does mop mean, and then when somebody explains it, like, oh, okay. And whether you like it or you don't, like it's intuitive.
Yes. So the White Sox are the brink of getting mopped. And a steak dinner bet update. This has not been a good series for my friend Beefloaf because the White Sox did an excellent job at run prevention against the San Francisco Giants. They have not done that against a weaker hitting Detroit Tigers squad. The Tigers have already scored 27 runs this series in 3 games compared to the White Sox 10. So now the magic number is 135 runs with 31 games remaining. Do the quick math. The White Sox have to allow fewer than 4.35 runs per game. So this is looking really strong for me. And when it comes to the run prevention side and the pitching side, I want to talk about Ky Bush, Jim, because he really struggled on Saturday. And I'm wondering how much longer the White Sox are going to keep rolling with Ky Bush for the remaining of the season. Here's audio from interim manager Grady Sizemore about Ky Bush's recent struggles.
For us right now, it's more just worrying about him trying to, control the strike zone, just doing a better job of just, throwing strikes. It's not surprising that Velo would be down, this late in the year, just considering where we're at, late in August and it's hot and, like you said, he is probably hitting, that innings limit, for him. So, those are all normal, but we'll see how he bounces back and how he's feeling, and just try to get back on track.
Now, as our beat reporter James Fegan, he was the one that asked the question to Grady Sizemore about taking into consideration the career high in innings pitched for Bush, and when you combine how many he threw in the minors and this year in the major leagues, he's already above 117 innings. Jim, how much more are the White Sox going to push Ky Bush?
I would say they don't have to push him anymore if like 90 miles per hour, 90, 91 is kind of what his fastball is sitting at right now. If that is indicative of fatigue, not bouncing back right, or battling some mechanical thing to where it might be affecting the way he's delivering the ball, and maybe doing something that he shouldn't be doing when it comes to just his mechanics and the kind of strain he's putting on his body, then I think they could say we've seen enough, or give him, put him on the injured list, or send him back to Charlotte, and maybe give him the different rotation schedule there to give him a little bit more rest. And I don't think it'd be like right now he's thrown like 14 more innings or 17 more innings than his previous high. So that's a case where you can still add on. Like there's no reason to shut him down just out of precautionary measures. There are warning signs here that say like, maybe something's off here and we really need to pay attention to it. I think he's done enough to where like he's provided a platform to build on next year to where he can have like a full 6-month workload, no questions. But I do think like with Nick Nastrini throwing well in Charlotte, like if you swap the two of them, I would see no harm in doing that and letting Bush try to scale back a little bit and see if he can get back to like 92, 93, which is where he should be. It really should be like 93, 94. That's why the 90, 91 he's throwing is jumping out. And when he doesn't have, like in his 2 starts ago, when he had command of his slider and also pretty good command of his changeup and his curveball as well. Like he had all 4 pitches working. Hitters had to respect them all for strikes. The fastball was still effective and he could sequence in ways he wanted to and didn't get punished for it. But when he was back to getting bad counts and he didn't have his challenge fastball to where hitters might be surprised by the deception in the delivery, they only need to see it once before like, oh, I know where it's coming from. And even if they are slightly late, being slightly late on 90 to 91 is not the same as being slightly late on 93, 94, and they still managed to punish it in due time. So there are enough signs here to where if he were optioned down, I would think that would be a decent move. He needed to be on the 40-man roster anyway by the end of the year, so there wasn't any harm in giving him this audition. But if he's going to continue throwing with this little velocity, I don't see any benefit in continuing to run him out there because the numbers are pretty grisly right now. When you see 16 walks to 11 strikeouts over 17 2/3 innings, that doesn't reflect well on him. And the White Sox, despite all of their struggles and despite the lack of guaranteed better starts, because Nestrini's not a guarantee, but the way he's been throwing the last few times out, he certainly looks like somebody who gives them a better chance to win, at least until he comes to the majors again and walks like 8 and 4 innings, and then you can kind of scratch that idea off the list. But he's earned another look.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Bush in 4 starts, 17 2/3 innings, 20 hits allowed, 11 earned runs. That's a 5.60 ERA, and as Jim mentioned, that gnarly walk to strikeout rate. In his last start against Detroit, 3 innings, 8 hits, 5 earned runs. It wasn't very competitive for Ky Bush against that Detroit Tigers lineup, but it's been pretty much the case for the White Sox throughout this series, and we'll see on how Davis Martin fares against this Tigers lineup. Things have just become a laugher, though, later in games, and we've been used to that all season long, that the Chicago White Sox starting pitchers have been far stronger in their performance than the bullpen. And here is what I will call a depressing fact. According to Inside Edge, which they provide great insight into stats and analysis for many sports, for Major League Baseball this year, they took a look at the number of quality starts for teams and their starting pitchers. The Chicago White Sox this year have 43 quality starts from their starting pitchers. Out of those 43 quality starts, the White Sox have only won 17 of those games, which is a winning percentage of .395. To compare, the Los Angeles Dodgers starting pitchers only have 1 more quality start than the White Sox. They have 44 quality starts. However, the Dodgers have won 38 of those games. The Dodgers are 38-6 this season when their starting pitcher has a quality start. The league average winning percentage when your starting pitcher has a quality start is .690, which is really significant, and it kind of feeds into this conversation. There are some that are, I guess, the league is looking into. I know Justin Verlander had a lot of thoughts about making it mandatory in a way that your starting pitcher has to throw 6 innings unless they hit certain requirements where they could be pulled out of a game earlier. But yeah, that's just another depressing fact in this season, Jim. It's just how poor this team has been, or underachieving, when it comes to quality starts from the starting pitchers. And like I said, we've seen that in this series, some late inning meltdowns from White Sox relievers that they're just kind of throwing guys at the board right now. On the offensive side, though, Jim, I want to get your thoughts about this kind of pseudo debate with Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets, because shockingly, Andrew Vaughn's on another heater. In his last 23 games, Andrew Vaughn's hitting .292 with a .347 on base percentage and slugging .517. That is the slash line I think we were all expecting Vaughn to have when they took him so early in the first round back in 2019. Vaughn has 4 homers, 13 RBIs. That's a 28 homer, 92 RBI pace. However, though, with this heater, it raises Vaughn's season numbers to a .246 batting average with a .300 on base percentage and slugging just .406 with 15 homers and 57 RBIs. It might be a stretch for Vaughn to get to 20 homers this year. But as I mentioned in the intro, Tim Elko has been hitting well in AAA. And you have both Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets that, despite whenever they had heaters and they had really good stretches, like a good month, their overall season numbers are still below league average when it comes to starting first baseman. So what do you think the White Sox are going to do? Does it make sense to bring back both Vaughn and Sheets, knowing that they're limited defensively? And offensively, they're just not keeping up with the Joneses when it comes to other major league teams and first base production.
It's funny, when you read that line off for Vaughn's recent stretch, it struck in my head like that sounds like a typical Jose Abreu season. And I looked it up. First 9 years in the league. So his first entire White Sox career, for that matter. I thought I left out the last year, but I didn't include it. .292, .354, .507. Is his line for his White Sox career. So that's a case of it's a little bit worrying that what feels like a real hot stretch for Vaughn is just like what the White Sox got all season from Abreu, whether it was cold April Abreu or hot Abreu in August. Like it all balanced out to like over the course of 160 games or 155 games or whatever you could count on him playing was what Vaughn is when he's good. So I think that's kind of my first aversion to believing too much in this Vaughn thing, is like, even when he's rolling, it's not like a force where he's all of a sudden like looking like an MVP. Cause usually like when you have, typical first base DH sluggers like bat first positions, like when they're hot, they're batting .330, they're slugging over 600. They're getting on base with, their OBP starts with a 4 when they're on these rolls. And so that's kind of what immediately, caused a little bit of a, now wait a minute, response when you mention buying too much into Vaughn. I think Vaughn, the idea with him was he was going to be such a steady presence. His plate discipline was going to be a lot better than Abreu, so you might be able to mitigate the extremes of running hot and cold with somebody who can get on base when he's not quite timing things up. And when he is timing things up, you're going to see somebody who's going to be getting on base like 40% of the time. So that's kind of my first instinct, is to say, well, wait until the end of the season for Vaughn. Like, I want to see what it looks like in September, because he's somebody who has experienced fades before when it comes to the long season. So will he finish strong? Or, and if he does carry it all the way through, then probably no harm in bringing him back, because his number is not going to be that high for his salary trajectory. If somebody wants to trade for him, so much the better. But given, that kind of Tim Elko is there, and Tim Elko is probably, more of the same. Like, I think my expectations for Elko would be like if he could capture a Vaughn season from the past couple of years in his rookie year, like that'd be awesome. And I don't see that. I just wonder if he has too many holes in his swing to be able to do that right away, hit the ground running. So that's why, like, no option seems great internally. But if Vaughn manages to carry this streak all the way through, like you're talking about 2 months of a good major leaguer, that's probably too much to ignore. But I think if it is a case where, he gets cold again and he has that fade again and the OPS kind of just never achieves escape velocity from 700, then I think, what are you doing here? or just, is change for the sake of change worth considering, even if there is a possibility of there being a little bit of egg on the face? Should they, let him go for nothing or trade him for the minimal trade value, and all of a sudden he catches on with another team and unlocks something that he couldn't unlock with the White Sox?
Well, I mean, that would just kind of fit with the theme, right? Looking at Michael Kopech with the Dodgers.
Yeah. Although Kopech did have a Kopech-like outing with his last time with the Dodgers. Like half his pitches were for strikes, 2 hits, 1 walk, no strikeouts, blown save. So there's still that guy in there. He's
still in there. Elko so far 24 games in AAA, has 5 homers, 4 doubles, a triple. He's batting .280 with a .345 on base percentage and slugging .490 in AAA, which is a 70-point increase in slugging from his numbers at AA. That kind of scans because, again, the hitting environments compared to Birmingham and the Southern League to Charlotte, you would expect to see a much higher slugging percentage at AAA. And so far in 24 games, 10 extra base hits from Tim Elko. That seems promising, but while I think maybe he deserves a September call-up to see what he could do in the majors, again, when you have both Vaughn and Sheets on the team and the White Sox still want to play these guys every single day, it's kind of hard to find at-bats for somebody like Tim Elko. And I don't know if it makes too much sense, like with the debate of bringing back both Vaughn and Sheets, Jim, for 2025. Like, I think this debate is a matter of principle. Realistically, both are coming back. And they're probably going to split time playing first base and get at-bats as a designated hitter. Now, they're both in arbitration starting next season. Vaughn's going to be hitting arbitration level 2. Sheets will be hitting arbitration level 1. And based on other salaries for the 2025 White Sox, they're going to be some of the highest paid players for the White Sox going into next season. It's just, again, heavy sigh. Both of them are not anywhere close to league average offensively when it comes to first baseman or even DH material in Major League Baseball. So does it make sense on a matter of principle to give them another full season in 2025 to see if they quote-unquote figure it out? Maybe if you're already succumbed to the fact that it's a lost season in 2025, so why not? And like I said, realistically, I think that's a direction the White Sox will go. However, the whole principle matter, logically, does this make sense? I don't know logically if it does make sense. Honestly, if I were advising the White Sox, I'd say pick one or the other. You cannot carry both next season.
I'm not necessarily inclined to think the White Sox are going to bring Gavin Sheets back. Again, like, he's having a good August. We'll see if he carries it through to September. But, his history is one of, looks like he's figured it out, and then the league makes an adjustment, and it's just very slow for him to get back on track and salvage his numbers. Like, he's right now at 8 homers, which for a guy his size and lack of defensive utility, like that's just not, no team can really roster a guy like him. Like, his OBP skills are not that great. It's just a case of just getting so used to him that you think anytime he's doing well and the White Sox do like him, he carries himself well. We've talked about this before. Like, there's no reason to dislike Gavin Sheets, like the person or the clubhouse presence. Like, he's a professional, tries his best. He's been dealt a good hand in some respects because he does get a lot of chances with the White Sox, dealt a bad hand in terms of like putting him in a position to succeed. And not only that, but just really routinely, absorbing his failures over and over again when it comes to playing right field. Like, seems like most other teams in baseball would have gotten off that after 1 year, maybe 1.5, if you tried to like do an off-season program and realize it wasn't working. And the White Sox, we're on year 4 until it seems like finally they've abandoned it. But when I look at like Tim Elko bringing him up, like I think about Nick Senzel, because I don't think about Nick Senzel because Nick Senzel has played in one game since August 5th. Like he's on the roster, but can't play. There's no spot for him, especially if they're committed to Miguel Vargas. Like there's just no way to get him in the lineup. There's no reason to play him. And while I think that there would be, more reason to play Elko just in terms of like unknown and age and, team control and whatnot, but still like the same idea of just, they have guys at those positions that they already feel compelled to play. So adding him, what does that do? But I would think like Sheets might be the one who gets nudged out just because, he just doesn't hit for enough power for a guy his size and his speed or lack thereof. And it's unfortunate, for him because like he's rallying. If he does carry it all the way through to September, then, it's a case where like, I'm not fully committed to the stance, but if it is, we've had 4 years of him or like 3 full seasons of him, having these ebbs and flows and thinking he's turned the corner and then he gets knocked down again. And so I'm waiting till September to really buy into what he's doing now, as welcome as it is to see him doing as well as he's doing now.
Yeah, I guess going into next season or even into this off season when we have the Sox Machine off-season plan project, I don't know what Gavin Sheets is the answer to any question the White Sox have. Like, if the question is dependable left-handed bats that could produce at a major league average level, the answer for Gavin Sheets is no, he can't do that. So then what's the point? Again, I'm expecting both to be on the White Sox 26-man roster going to next season, despite the points that you bring up, Jim, that it's not for certain when it comes to Gavin Sheets. But because of such a minimal payroll and the White Sox probably want to stack as many experienced players on their 2025 team and not just run a whole team of rookies going to next season, which would financially really bottom out the payroll, and then it would be like Andrew Benintendi and Luis Robert, and then everybody else would be like league minimum if you let go both of Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets. But yeah, just moving forward, neither of these guys have provided a lot of answers to the questions that the White Sox have had. It's, even though Vaughn's been hitting a lot better the last 23 games, his season numbers are still woeful. I guess I'm just sitting here waiting, being like, all right, when is he going to figure it out? Because after this season in arbitration level 2, he will be a free agent after the 2026 season. So the clock is already ticking. The White Sox control of Andrew Vaughn is already past the halfway point.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 2017 top 100 prospects list to see who they could bring in to fill that Sheets roster spot. Like Kyle Lewis is there, Bobby Bradley, have a couple options for if they want to try to dust somebody off and, add to their list of failed. Jake Bauers, another one that could fill that role. So they have options.
Has Jake Bauers not been on the White Sox? It seems like he would have already been on the team by now.
Yeah, no, they've had players like him, but not him.
Not him. Not yet. Not yet, at least. Nick Senzel, that's hilarious. He's played in one game the last couple of weeks. Why is he even on the team? Like,
Dominic Smith, like he's been floating around. He could be an option. So there's another one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there you go. There you go. See, now Chris Getz has got options if he decides to move on from Gavin Sheets. They just need... Maybe it's easier said than done, but they need more guys that have a chance of hitting 20 homers. I mean, Paul DeJong was that guy. They signed him for $1.75 million. Technically, he still leads the White Sox in home runs hit this year. And DeJong is still a 20-plus home run type of bat. They just need to bring in more of those guys. Like Gavin Sheets at 8 homers. He's not doing anything for you, like, at all. It just doesn't make much sense to continue carrying him. And that's just how I feel. And I would love to hear feedback in the Sox Machine comment section on this particular debate. If you could only bring one back going to next season, who would it be? Andrew Vaughn or Gavin Sheets? I think I would side with Andrew Vaughn despite all of the issues that I have with Vaughn, only because I think he's got a better shot of reaching 20 homers over Gavin Sheets, who just shockingly for how big he is doesn't have a whole lot of power.
He's done it before. Vaughn did last year. So, and he might get there this year with the way he's hitting. But yeah, he's topped out 21, so he's right in his range.
Yeah, which is still not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Especially looking at home run totals this year in Major League Baseball, and we'll get to that later in the show. The Chicago White Sox, after Monday night against the Detroit Tigers, welcome the Texas Rangers for the Tuesday through Thursday series. So we'll take a quick moment here to preview that series. The Rangers, after Sunday, are 60-71. They're 10 games back in the American League West. That's still good for third place, though. But they're 12.5 games back on the wild card. They're pretty much dead when it comes to the postseason race. They are 4-6 in their last 10 games, and they have lost their last 2 games after Sunday. The pitching probables for this series, Tuesday night at 7:10 p.m. Central Time. It's Andrew Heaney for the Rangers, another left-handed pitcher the White Sox will be facing. They've been getting lots of lefties in this series against Detroit. Against Garrett Crochet, we'll see if Crochet goes 3 or 4 innings for the White Sox. Wednesday night at 7:10 p.m. Central Time, it's to be announced for the Rangers, but Chris Flexen will be making the start for the White Sox. That 19 consecutive game losing streak when Flexen's appeared in a game for the White Sox is still on the line. And Thursday at 1:10 p.m. Central Time, it's still Kai Busch for the White Sox as the projected starter. Nathan Eovaldi will take the ball for the Texas Rangers. But looking at the Texas Rangers, when this series does come up later in this week, Jim, I have to ask you, do you believe in the idea of a World Series hangover when it comes to teams like the Rangers who just aren't able to bounce back after winning the World Championship?
I think there are two kinds of hangovers. I think there's the kind that the White Sox had in 2006, which is, that wasn't so much a hangover. They won 90 games, but just they happened to be in the wrong division at that time. But you could see the fatigue for the pitching staff kicking in, and they did try to offset it with acquiring Vasquez, and didn't quite work out. But they had like an idea of, wow, these guys threw a lot of innings in the regular season and in the postseason, need to do something to kind of shore it up, and they tried, and worked for the first half, and then eventually it set in. And yeah, I think sometimes you see the long season, just hard to repeat that 2 years in a row. And so that I would consider like a World Series hangover. But I think the Rangers were a different kind, to where they kind of invited it. They won the World Series, and they didn't really follow it up with any kind of meaningful investments. They all were kind of hedging signings when it comes to what they did at the major league level, like Tyler Mahle and Lorenzen, and they're all kind of depth signings that were helpful, but not going to provide any kind of impactful production. It was more counting on the holdovers or guys like Wyatt Langford coming in and like basically hitting the ground running well enough to be able to produce, and everybody around them like Travis Jankowski would be like more of a fourth outfielder type, utility type. So that's why like I think they were more or less like, oh, we did our big investments last year. We got what we wanted. TV deal is uncertain, and maybe we spent a little bit more than we wanted to last year, so we're gonna just pare it back a little bit, cross our fingers that like Max Scherzer is healthy enough, and like we get we have pretty good health, and if it doesn't work out, we still have a World Series title, and we haven't made any kind of costly contract moves or traded anybody away that they'd be regretting it because they just tried to double or nothing with their World Series title. And I think their big picture is still, probably maybe as healthy as, maybe all but like 3 teams. So I think they're in good shape. I think they just invited a hangover because they didn't try to bring in anybody else. And we're banking on some veterans who are really on the older side, and, having Evan Carter play so well, like, there's no sophomore insurance for him, or Wyatt Langford, they gave him the Andrew Vaughn treatment, except playing him in his natural position. So the fact that he's not like you're running away at the Rookie of the Year award, like people thought he might. That's something that just put them a little bit behind too.
Yeah, for the Rangers offensively, Corey Seager has 29 homers this season in 117 games played, so he's missed some action. Adolis Garcia has 21 homers this year, but a 687 OPS. And Marcus Semien, old friend, he had a great 2023 season. not been so great in 2024. His OPS is 714. He does have 18 homers for the Texas Rangers. It's been a disappointing season down in Arlington, but looking at the last 10 world champions, 5 missed the postseason, but the most recent was the Washington Nationals in the 2020 COVID year. They went 26-34. The last 3 champions, the Houston Astros, the Atlanta Braves, and the Los Angeles Dodgers, those teams did make the postseason. The Astros, of course, lost in the American League Championship Series last year to the Texas Rangers. The Braves and Dodgers both won over 100 games. So maybe this World Series hangover idea is a little overblown, especially when we talk about them in a moment here. The Arizona Diamondbacks losing the World Series to the Texas Rangers. They maybe had a little bit of a hangover to start the season, but they are red hot right now. So it may just be a singular case here for the Texas Rangers. They pushed all their chips in last year. Totally worked for them. Pennants fly forever. Great for them. But even if they do sweep the White Sox, they're so far under 500 and they're so far behind entering the final month of the season that the reigning world champions will not be part of the postseason. So we'll have another world champion in 2024. And that's also interesting from a Major League Baseball perspective. We still have not had a repeat champion since the 2000 Yankees. And that's just fascinating, Jim. Like, we're almost going through a generation of fans that have not seen back-to-back champions in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and the longer the postseason gets and the more ways that, you know, great teams can be knocked out early, like the chances reduce. I mean, this is kind of the idea of expanding the postseason, is getting more teams involved, giving everybody a chance, getting teams like the Royals being able to get there, like teams like the Diamondbacks that maybe aren't a traditional power. Yeah, they can spend, but didn't spend a whole lot to get to the World Series last year, more or less develop their way into it. You know, that's, I think, what they want. And there's a trade-off, like in terms of, you know, the significance of the regular season, or you see like with free agent signings or, you know, trades, you see teams not striving to be great as much. And you're seeing, you know, players getting frustrated with just how hard it is to get like a great contract now because teams don't feel as motivated to do it. But on the other hand, like if you do want to try to promote the idea of parity, like, you know, being able to, you know, say the Dodgers, for as good as they've been for, you know, just division title after division title, kind of like the Braves at the in the 90s and you know, turn of the century. Same thing, like just as great as they are, only one World Series title to show for it. So I'd rather see like teams shooting for 100 wins, 110 wins. Like that to me is like really appealing because like I like seeing depth. Like I'm amazed by teams that can win 110 games more than I'm amazed by like a team that gets hot in October, just because they're two different kinds of baseball and I prefer the regular season kind. But yeah, I think there is, if you are of the mindset that the only thing that matters is winning the whole thing, then there are more ways for teams to win the whole thing.
Let's move over to around Major League Baseball after talking about the Texas Rangers. Good way to segue into, because I have 3 bullet points I want to chat with you about, Jim, that's catching my attention. The Arizona Diamondbacks, who lost against the Texas Rangers last year in the World Series. Since July 1st of this season, the Diamondbacks are 33-13. 33-13. That's the best record in Major League Baseball. They have made up 7.5 games on the Los Angeles Dodgers during that stretch. And it just feels again like, here we go again. The Diamondbacks are getting red hot at a good time. Is there enough behind this stretch of baseball for Arizona where they could possibly catch the Dodgers and really make the Dodgers sweat late in September?
They could, just because of starting pitching depth. The Dodgers feel like they're like in adventure mode right now, to where every time a starter goes 6, they're pleasantly surprised. Anytime a starter gets knocked out before then, it's a matter of stitching together innings and being way too reliant on Joe Kelly, which White Sox fans are familiar with the idea of all of a sudden needing him to be a lockdown guy, both healthy and effective at the same time. And it's hard to find that guy for long stretches of time. So they're vulnerable as they've ever been, and you can score runs on them. So, and I think they also have a little bit of the psyche thing of just never feeling great with the lead. They can score runs, which is what keeps them from feeling like the White Sox in late games, just because either they can kick more games out of high leverage situations, or if they do lose a lead, you still have to get them out in the top or the bottom of the innings, depending on whether they're home or away. So I could see the Dodgers still being deep enough to hold them off, but the way the Diamondbacks are built, and I think one of the disappointments how they started is they played a very pleasing brand of baseball last year, especially late in the season. We saw Pedro Grifol extolling their virtues and saying, well, if the Diamondbacks can do it without huge star contributors, what's stopping us? And then you realize, defense and offense and pitching, that's what's stopping the White Sox. But you could understand the impulse of liking the way they're built, the way they defend, the way they run, having pretty good threats up and down the lineup, feeling like if it's 8-9-1, you're not out of the woods with facing them because you have a whole bunch of guys who can turn over the lineup. It's a modular lineup with lefties and righties. So you can get matchups they're liking. And so as a baseball fan, I'm happy to see that it's not a flash in the pan, because you would like that to be a viable style of baseball. Even if you can't spend like the Dodgers or the Mets or the Yankees, what have you, you can at least develop enough guys to get you most of the way there. And then it comes down to, whether it's, targeted expensive signings or a case of just being so platoonable, kind of the Rays model. And I think the Diamondbacks kind of do a little bit of both. They develop very well, but also I think they're pretty well managed and good at slapping on patches over the course of the season. We need a lefty, you can run the outfield a little bit. Let's get this guy in there because we need a little bit of relief there. And Torey Lovullo is good at using those guys, and Mike Hazen seems good at finding them. Kind of like to bring another team in, like the Guardians, same way, like the Francona Guardians of just getting by with a lack of name brand talent because they're just good at seeing what they bring to the table and asking for that and mitigating as much of their weaknesses as they possibly can. And I think the Diamondbacks have found something similar, and seeing Corbin Carroll disappointing and still them being on this roll, I think is a good sign for them, because if Carroll figures it out and if he looks like the, MVP candidate he was at some point, then all of a sudden, that adds a whole nother level of just production, whether it's speed, whether it's power, that they've been missing all year. And it's, I think Carroll was the most enjoyable thing about them last year. And if he gets back to that point, then even so much the better for them.
Jock Peterson has 20 homers this year. His on-base percentage, Jim, is over 400. He's at 402. And by the way, Corbin Carroll, in his last 27 games, so we talked about Andrew Vaughn's heater. Corbin Carroll has 8 homers in his last 27 games with a 982 OPS. So Carroll is definitely figuring it out at the right time. That could be helping push this stretch for the Arizona Diamondbacks. But, back to the whole Sheets and Vaughn debate. When you got guys like Jock Peterson who are positionless, but at DH in 108 games give you 20 homers, 16 doubles, and an OPS of 939, that's perfect. They don't break the bank for you anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the direction the White Sox need to go in the upcoming offseason, and why I'm not thrilled about this whole notion and idea of continuing to give guys repeat chances here. Because the Diamondbacks are showing, Eugenio Suarez struggled, but he's got to 20 homers. Ketel Marte has been red hot as well. He's at 30 homers this year. And Christian Walker has been steady for the Diamondbacks for years now. He's got 23 homers. The Diamondbacks suddenly, for a team that was all about defense and speed, they got 4 guys in their lineup with 20-plus homers before September rolls around. So they have added more power. And that is a lesson that they should have learned from last year's World Series against that Texas Rangers lineup where they just got smacked around after game 2. So don't count on the Diamondbacks yet. This might be more than just I don't think it's a mirage for Arizona. Again, 33-13 since July 1st.
And Josh Bell too, like second consecutive year of just him getting traded and then like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be good and hitting. Like, I think if I'm interested in Josh Bell, I don't pick him up until July. I wait for some other team to sign him, and then, but yeah, like the Jock Peterson thing too, like going back to the return of Adam Eaton. The White Sox, they had that problem with Rick Hahn of just signing guys and wondering what do they do well again, and not being able to answer that conclusively. Whereas like Jock Peterson is, he hits homers against righties. Like that's what what he does. Whether he does it well enough to produce over the lack of utility elsewhere is a question, but you can at least answer, what does he do well? He hits homers. Gavin Sheets, what does he do well? There isn't that ready answer.
Other notes that I have for Major League Baseball, Aaron Judge, speaking of toward runs, he's got 51 homers on the season now, 122 RBIs. His season OPS is above 1,200. In Judge's last 26 games, 15 home runs. Aaron Judge, in his last 26 games, has hit as many home runs as Andrew Vaughn has in 120, which is just crazy. During this last 26 game stretch for Judge, he's batting .441 with a .570 on base percentage. So he's getting on base 57% of the time and slugging over 900. Like, congratulations, Aaron Judge is the American League MVP. And then, Jim, I want to get your thoughts about, I think, a topic that's going to be more hotly debated in this last month because you have this classic New York versus LA conversation in sports. The National League MVP, Shohei Ohtani, we know, is legendary. 6.3 WAR as a DH, which is insane. 41 homers, 40 stolen bases, 94 RBIs. But before you award the MVP to Shohei Ohtani, a little out of the blue, Francisco Lindor is having a phenomenal season. Lindor currently has the edge over Ohtani at 6.5 WAR according to Fangraphs, despite hitting 27 homers and 78 RBIs and just 25 stolen bases. He's lacking offensively against Ohtani, but he's still having a great season offensively. It's just that Ohtani's been that phenomenal. Defensively, though, Lindor is 14 outs above average at the shortstop position. Lindor, despite being in his 30s now, still amazing defensively. So when you put it all together for Lindor, he's been incredibly well-rounded for the New York Mets, and maybe the reason why they're still hanging on a thread of trying to make the postseason, the National League. They're 2.5 games back with the final wild card spot. So, Jim, if you had to vote right now before September comes around and who deserves to be the National League MVP, who do you go with, Lindor or Ohtani?
I go with Ohtani, and in defense of Lindor, or with all due respect, and there actually is respect. A lot of times you say with all due respect and you don't actually mean it. But in this case, like, I do respect Lindor. Like, I'm happy when guys sign big contracts and then deliver on them, or deliver on them for as long as you could expect them to. Like, you're never going to get the perfect 10-year contract of going 10 for 10 with production. Some guys come close, but you hate seeing when guys tail off like 3 years into a 10-year deal, like the Albert Pujols contract. And then that scares teams away from being ever aggressive in the market, or like with the White Sox, as we saw, anytime like a Marcus Semien pops up, and the White Sox could really use a guy like Marcus Semien, and you'll have people saying, well, what about this contract? And the White Sox don't develop those guys. They don't sign them. And you get in this hole of just never having those guys because you shut off one way of doing it. But so I like seeing Lindor kind of, after struggling or not quite meeting New York's expectations for the contract he signed, all of a sudden being like, oh yeah, he's still really good. And he might be a Hall of Famer with the pace that he's on, and just the well-rounded skills that he's shown. Like, it's kind of surprising to think, like, is he a Hall of Famer? And but then when you see what he's doing at the toughest position year after year, a case is being built up, like a pretty good one. So I do like Lindor a lot, but I think like Ohtani, there's still the round numbers thing. A lot of black ink, like leading the league in homers, RBIs, runs, slugging. Like, he's got impressive league leading totals. I'm amazed by him. Still, like, it still shocks me how fast he is. And like, it doesn't shock me. His pitching doesn't shock me as much as his speed does. Like, I can buy, he's a Cy Young contender and a home run title champion. Like, I can buy that because like you always have the idea that, in high school, the shortstops were the pitchers as well. Like, you're the best player. I've seen that on certain levels of your best hitter also being your best pitcher. So I buy that, but also like stealing a ton of bases and like leading the league in triples. That's what blows my mind. Like, you shouldn't be able to do all of that. So I think, being 40-40 in late August and, maybe being 50-50 by the end of the year, I think that'll impress my caveman brain enough to be like, oh yeah, Ohtani easy with all, like Lindor. Yeah, I get the, the outs above average and, defensive runs saved and all that, creating like a very impressive wins above replacement total. And most seasons, yes, I would agree to that and say Lindor is the MVP. But if it's even or close to it, I tend to give like the huge number. Same thing with like Judge, versus Bobby Witt. It's the same debate, although like Judge is really just, he's taking another notch to where like Witt might not be able to close that gap. But in that case, like, I'd still be thinking like 10 years from now, I'm still probably going to remember, oh yeah, Judge 63 homers versus like the Witt's well-rounded ability. And so like, if you boil it down to what year was that, I'd much be able to identify Ohtani going 50-50 versus Lindor doing a whole bunch of things incredibly well and being this very valuable player.
Yeah, Lindor is just 30 years old. He turns 31 in November. And this is another crazy thing because, again, for White Sox fans, we've known Francisco Lindor from the very beginning. When he joined Cleveland back in 2015, Lindor is already a top 25 shortstop in the history of Major League Baseball. He's already that. I think he's got a chance to maybe be, before the end of his career, definitely top 20, maybe top 15 all time in Major League Baseball when you consider wins above replacement. So to your point, Jim, yeah, Lindor has an honest shot of making the Hall of Fame. He's finished multiple times in the top 10 when it comes to the MVP, but he's never won the Most Valuable Player award. It's going to be interesting in how this debate breaks down again in the national shows, the talking heads. You got the classic New York versus Los Angeles debate. We'll see in the last month, but I'm with you. I would still give Ohtani the nod to winning the National League MVP, but if Lindor can stay hot and carry the Mets, if they could catch the Braves and pass the Braves and get into the postseason, then Lindor all of a sudden has this narrative on his side as well, where Ohtani's playing on a team of stars. Lindor was able to carry this Mets team into the postseason when it didn't look very likely at all in the first half of this season. So interesting debate. Aaron Judge has completely ruined the American League MVP debate with his recent stretch of play. But in the National League, we have a conversation now, thanks to Lindor really stepping up this year, and Ohtani, again, still a magical season. That's what I had for my bullet points around Major League Baseball. Jim, what is catching your attention?
Talking about rookies that didn't hit the ground running with Wyatt Langford, like Jackson Merrill. He surprised me in terms of just how important he's been in the Padres for all of their roster moves and everybody they brought in and everybody they're counting on to, be producing at MVP levels or award-winning levels. Like Machado's been okay, Tatis has been okay. They've been, Tatis has missed games and such. Kim has been disappointing. All of a sudden, you have like Merrill stepping up, and he's getting towards 20 homers. Talking about that level, and Jurickson and Profar, like those are the two guys right now who have been maybe the most reliable sources of offense for that team, and they're running right alongside the Diamondbacks and running right behind the Dodgers, to where like like the Diamondbacks can't afford to slip up because the Padres might pass them by. It's a cool 3-team race going on there. So I think that's what's kind of jumping out to me. I'm currently eating my words a little bit with the Tigers, AJ Hinch. So I'm holding off my criticisms with regards to other teams that aren't doing that well. Although, like, yeah, we'll see how the Tigers perform after leaving Chicago, because they've been in Chicago for a long time, it turns out. But that's what's jumping out to me. Like, the Padres have been so good recently that the Giants, even though it was an important series for them against the White Sox, not really, because they're still fourth and a distant fourth because of how well both the Diamondbacks and the Padres are playing.
My good friend Brent, who lives out in San Diego, Padres fan, texted me an image watching today's Padres game. And what the Padres broadcast put on the screen, Jim, most game-tying or go-ahead home runs in a single season, so home runs hit in the 8th inning or later at the age of 21 or younger since 1900. Jackson Merrill this season has 6 such home runs after the 8th inning that either tied the game or gave the Padres the lead. He has tied Frank Robinson, who in 1956 had 6 home runs as well. And Jackson Merrill passed Mel Ott, who in 1929 had 5 such homers.
Mel Ott was actually going to be my guess for one of them, because I remember he was incredible. Like, when you're talking that young, it's almost certainly a Hall of Famer. Or somebody had a tragic injury and you don't hear about him that often, but would have been on a Hall of Fame track.
Yeah, so Jackson Merrill's having a very special season. National League Rookie of the Year is a very interesting debate as well when you consider Paul Skeens and what he did for Pittsburgh, and Merrill now coming in red hot. Yeah, the awards conversations are going to be pretty interesting. And I can't wait to have those conversations in a month after the season ends and we make our picks as well. Because when you are watching the White Sox every day, you can take it with a grain of salt of just how great performances some are. And if these great performances are happening against the White Sox, well, then they don't carry much weight.
Again, I'm looking very forward to October, like I was last year, just of being able to watch baseball for an extended amount of time in the context of major league teams playing major league teams.
This is what it's supposed to be.
Because the White Sox, they're literally not a major league team right now. They are like a AAA team being thrown into the fire. If you win fewer than 40 games, you're talking about maybe not the Charlotte Knights, because they are but the Norfolk Tides. When there was that debate when the Norfolk Tides were stomping the Charlotte Knights early in the season, running up the score on them, and people wondered how well would they play? And they wouldn't compete for anything, but they would be better than the White Sox this year. So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, this White Sox team is going to break some war models. And see if anyone makes any adjustments to what the 2024 White Sox have done.
They do have a handsome home run to RBI ratio when it comes to wins and losses.
They sure do.
I've talked about this before, just when it comes to an aesthetically pleasing line, if you have a home run total that starts with a 3 and an RBI total that starts with a 10, that's what you want. And right now the White Sox are if you put a 290 batting average in front of that line, that would be a great season the White Sox are having. It just wins and losses, not so much, but it is that staggering, I'm not used to seeing that when you look at the standings.
Yeah. Yeah.
3-10.
It's ugly. It is ugly. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back Thursday night after the Rangers series to recap what happens between the White Sox and the Rangers and preview the upcoming weekend series. We just talked about Francisco Lindor. He'll be in town as the New York Mets next weekend will be facing the Chicago White Sox. We'll preview that series and then look ahead to September as the calendar flips from August to September. And, of course, update you guys on how the steak dinner bet is going. But thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen to the show and watch it on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. Follow our beat reporter, James Fegan, at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and want full access to our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine, where monthly plans start at $5. There is an annual subscription discount as well. Ad-free versions of both the podcast and the website. We have additional tiers of support that give you additional access as well, including our monthly Zoom calls and our group chats to give you direct access to James and Jim. If you're interested, go to patreon.com/Sox Machine to sign up. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
Drinking and driving is a decision that could change your whole world. Things will never be the same if you ever get a DUI. Because legal fees and time in court are just the beginning. Getting into a crash is another way that your world can be turned upside down. Your vehicle may not be the only thing that gets damaged in that crash. You can face a life-altering injury or even death, but you're not the only one that can face those consequences. Your decision to drink and drive can permanently impact not just your world, but someone else's world as well. Whether you injure them or leave their loved ones grieving. The next time you're out drinking, call a rideshare, a taxi, a sober friend, or a designated sober driver. The only decision that will change your world for the better is the decision to call for a sober ride. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.